Hello, brothers and sisters in Christ. My name is Emily, and this is chapter 6 in reading the Bible chronologically. And we are only covering 2 chapters, so I'm hoping that this video will be a little bit shorter than the last one. But let's go ahead and start this chapter in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, I thank you so much for everything that you do in your word, and thank you for calling me on this journey to read through the Bible chronologically. And Lord, I pray that my words would be your words. Thank you for your love and your mercy and your guidance. In Jesus' name I pray these things. Amen. All right, so we are going to be reading Genesis 10 and 11. So I was reading through this and I'm like, wow, this video could be like 10 minutes long. Basically, Genesis 10 is a genealogy from the 3 sons of Noah, which is Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And I know I got super passionate in the last chapter about the curses and the blessings. And so this is kind of going on from there. And then Genesis 11 talks about the Tower of Babel and then more genealogy. So I had a lot of help from BibleHub.com to make this enjoyable, because I know genealogies can kind of just get long and redundant and boring. But it's amazing what the Lord can do through the chapters where you don't really think that there's anything there. There's so much that he has to teach you and to teach me. And so I really hope that let's just dive in and let's learn about the generations leading into the Tower of Babel, and then afterwards it's going to be the genealogy moving into Abraham, which we all know, Father Abraham had many sons, and he is blessed, and his descendants are as much as the stars in the sky. So that's kind of what this is, like a prelude to that. So let's go ahead and start. So I did actually go to a different site this week. I went to www.foundationsforfreedom.net, and this guy's name is Paul Bucknell, and I'll put the link below. Talks about Genesis 10 and 11, and I just really like his insight, and he kind of brings like some passion to maybe not so exciting text. So I'm gonna go ahead and kind of read like his kind of description. So he says that Genesis is a book of foundations, which is true. I mean, so far we've learned the foundations of the world. We've also learned about the foundations of our fall, and where sin enters into our journey, and then also the foundations of the Lord kind of starting over and then rebuilding his foundation through Noah. So let's go ahead. So Genesis 10 and 11 enables us to jump ahead in our understanding of the development of the nations. They not only enable us to trace Abraham's line back to Noah's godly line, but also to discover the keys to understanding our modern society's linguistic and societal groups. I have lots of pictures in this one, so get excited. So basically he kind of describes Genesis 10 and 11 in 3 different points. He brings in the benefit of connection between the ancient and modern worlds through the records, and then establishing the development of the multiplicity of our languages, and then 3 deepens our faith and commitment to God of the scriptures. So I'm going to just quote this. I really like how he states this. If people realized that we share roots in common with those mentioned in the scriptures, then they would have to face the God who designed and made them. They would see God's place in history. History is being driven to accomplish God's work rather than as a secularist demand that religion is development along with ignorant men. God wants to link our modern generation to the ancient world, for it is only then can we gain a full understanding of the Lord of history and his purpose among mankind. All right, nice job, Paul. And then, so you remember when we discussed Genesis 5 and we did a whole genealogy thing of Shem. So obviously Cain killed Abel. Cain is a vagabond. This is just a little like reminder of the chapters before. He is just kind of going back and forth through the earth. Cain, he's kind of like forgotten. We don't really talk about Cain as much. And then Adam and Eve have Shem, and then that's where we discussed that genealogy. So the third son of Adam and Eve, which is interesting because it's a holy number. I didn't even remember that. Paul Bucknell ties chapter 5 with 11, which I love that. The genealogies of Genesis 5 and 11 work together to unite ancient history with modern history through Abraham. They have several similarities. So they both explore 10 generations. And so let me just kind of show you like a picture. I liked this. This was on his, the website, where I got all of the information, from Paul Bucknell. Basically this is, it might be a little blurry, sorry. I don't know if you can see it. I kind of tried to blow it up, but I feel like it made it blurry. So this is from, this is Genesis, Adam to Noah. Okay, so I'll just read it quick. So Adam is at like the beginning of time, 0. And then Seth, he was 130 when Seth was born. So they kind of like fast forwarded past Cain and Abel. And then Seth had Enosh. Remember, Enosh is the first son and generation to call on the name of the Lord. And then, oh man, this is really blurry. I can't even read it. Kenan and Methuselah and Jared, and then Enoch and Methuselah and Lamech. And then Adam dies, and then Enoch is taken. Remember, the Lord just takes him. And then Noah. Okay, so we're like at Noah right here. Okay, so Noah is 1056, the flood happens, and then this is where this genealogy picks up, which is from Noah, right here. You see Noah picking up at 1056. Right? And then it goes to Shem, and then it goes through Shem. And the reason it goes through Shem is, if you remember in the last chapter, in chapter 9, Shem is one of the sons that is blessed. And what we understand Shem is that is the Jewish, and that's where the Jews come from, and the Jewish generations. And so the Gentiles, we kind of discuss like later on. We hear a lot about the Gentiles in the New Testament, and that's kind of like what we are. We're like, if we're not Jewish, we're Gentiles. And so anyways, that's kind of like a little overview. And we'll talk about all of these guys right here. And Eber, if you can see right here, Eber is kind of where like the Jews come from, and we'll kind of get into that. So that's pretty cool. So those are 10 generations. So they're both they both explore 10 generations, as you can see. 10 generations, 10 generations, and then 10 generations. Okay, so the genealogy of chapter 10 shows how all the people of the world derive from these 3 sons of Noah: Japheth, Ham, and Shem. And so chapter 10 is basically broken down into 3 sections. And so we're just going to kind of like go through those 3 sections. And so the first one is going to be, we're going to talk about Japheth, which we understand is where the Gentiles come from. Okay? So we're just going to read chapters 1 through 7. Now this is the genealogy of the sons of Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, and sons were born to them after the flood. So the first one. The sons of Japheth were Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Mesech, and Tyrus. The sons of Gomer were Ashkenaz, Riphtha, and Tagamar. The sons of Javan and Elisha, Tarishish, Kittim, and Dodanim. You're just enjoying me annihilating these names. From these, the coastland peoples of the Gentiles were separated into their lands, everyone according to his language, according to their families, into their nations. So there you go. Japheth, Gentiles. Okay, got that? Okay, so now we're going to read to the second part, which is the generations of Ham. So if we backtrack to last week, we know that Ham had his fourth son, Canaan, and Canaan is cursed. And so if we read that, chapter 9, verse 24 through 25, it says, "So Noah woke from his wine and knew what his younger son had done," or grandson. We kind of discussed that idea of that. "Then he said, 'Cursed be Canaan, a servant of servants, he shall be to his brethren.'" And so that's kind of where we're at. So if you can kind of remember that. So let's pick up in verse 6, chapter 10, verse 6, and we're going to read, we're going to start at verse 8. So 8 through 20, and we're going to read about Ham. So, all right. "The sons of Ham were Cush, Mizraim, Put, and Canaan." Remember Canaan? There you go. The sons of Cush were Seba, Havilah, Sabta, Ramah, and Sabcha. And the sons of Ramah were Sheba and Dedan. Cush begot Nimrod. So if you can remember Nimrod, he's bad news. "He began to be a mighty one on the earth. He was a mighty hunter before the Lord. Therefore it says, like Nimrod, the mighty hunter before the Lord." Okay. "And the beginning of his kingdom was Babel, Erech, Akkad, and Calneh in the land of Shinar. From that land we went to Assyria and built Nineveh." So I think Nineveh is probably like maybe ringing a bell. Jonah, and God told Jonah to go to Nineveh because they are not being good people and they are being sinful. And so Jonah's like, "Yeah, right, no, I think I'm just going to get on a boat." And then, the big fish comes. So, we'll get to that. But that's what I thought of when I thought of Nineveh. Rehoboth, Kala, and Raisin between Nineveh and Kala. That is the principal city. So those are all the cities, okay, of that Canaan and Ham and their generation kind of went to. Merizmaim begot Ludim and Anamim and Lahibim and Lephetuhim and Pathrasim and Calusim, from whom came the Philistines and Caphartim. Canaan begot Sidon, his firstborn, and Heth, and the Jebusite, the Amorite, and the Girishite, and the Hivite, and the Archite, and the Simonite, and the Avidite, and the Zamorite, and the Hamathite. They like the ites, huh? Afterward, the families of the Canaanites were dispersed, and the border of the Canaanites was from Sidon, as you go toward Gerar, and far as Gaza. And then as you go toward Sodom, Gomorrah, Admah, so Sodom and Gomorrah, ring a bell, and Zeboim, as far as Laishah. These were the sons of Ham according to their families, according to their languages, in their lands, and in their nations. So, all right. It'd be cool if I had like a whole map of like kind of where they were, but I didn't do that. So I did go ahead and go to Christianity.com, and as you know, I go to Bible Hub a lot, and Matthew Henry's commentary was on that site, and this is what he had to say about Ham in those verses 8 through 20. Nimrod was a great hunter. Hunting then was a method of preventing the hurtful increase of wild beasts. This required great courage and address, and thus gave an opportunity for Nimrod to command others and gradually attach a number of men to one leader. From such a beginning, it is likely that Nimrod began to rule and to force others to submit. He invaded his neighbors' rights and properties and persecuted innocent men, endeavoring to make all his own by force and violence. He carried on his oppressions and violence in defiance of God himself. Nimrod's name signifies rebellion. Tyrants to men are rebels to God. So that is his understanding. Now, obviously, test all of that. And then Canaan was cursed by Noah. So we can read, so as I said before, read Genesis 9:25. So we had already read that. So third part of chapter 10, we're already almost done. Isn't that great? Is going to be talking about Shem. And so when we go back to last week, we understand that Shem is where the Jews and the chosen people are from. Okay, so we're going to read verses 21 through 32. And children were born also to Shem, the father of all the children of Eber, the brother of Japheth the elder. The sons of Shem were Elam, Asher, Arphaxad, Lud, and Aram. The sons of Aram were Uz, Hul, Gether, and Mash. Arphax begot Shala, and Shala begot Eber. To Eber were born 2 sons. The name of one was Peleg, for in his days the earth was divided, and his brother's name was Joktan. Joktan begot Almadad, Shelef, Hazarimaveth, Jerah, Hadaram, Uzel, Dikla, Obal, Abimal, Sheba, Ophir, Hivala, and Jobab. And all these were the sons of Joktan. Wow, Joktan had a lot of sons. And their dwelling place was from Mesha as you go toward Sephar, the mountain of the east. These were the sons of Shem, according to their families, according to their languages, in their lands, according to their nations. These were the families of the sons of Noah, according to their generations, in their nations, and from these the nations were divided on the earth after the flood. All right, cool. So we got through that. Matthew Henry's commentary on this too, I really liked, so I'm going to read it. The posterity of Canaan were numerous, rich, and pleasantly seated. So we are going back now to Canaan. So, sorry, backtrack here. So Canaan obviously was the one that was cursed. So we're kind of going into a little bit of background. The posterity of Canaan were numerous, rich, and pleasantly seated, yet Canaan was under a divine curse, which we read last week, and not a curse causeless. Those that are under the curse of God may perhaps thrive and prosper in this world, for we cannot know love or hatred, the blessing or the curse, by what is before us, but what is within us. The curse of God always works, really, and always terribly. Perhaps it is a secret curse, a curse to the soul, and does not work so that others can see it, or a slow curse and does not work soon, but sinners are reserved by it for a day of wrath. Canaan here has a better land than either Shem or Japheth. Interesting, even though he's cursed, he has a better, visual. It's kind of like, don't judge a book by its cover. Yeah, Canaan may look beautiful, but there's a huge curse on it, so there you go. And yet they have a better lot, for they inherited the blessing. So Shem and Japheth are blessed. Abram and his seed, God's covenant people, descended from Eber, which is what I was saying, and from him were called Hebrews. How much better it is to be like Eber, the father of a family of saints and honest men, than the father of the family of hunters after power, worldly wealth, or vanities. Goodness is true greatness. So, awesome. All right, so we are going to move on to chapter 11, and we're going to read this one a little bit slower because, we all know the Tower of Babel and just the huge effect that it has on us today. So, I'm going to read verses 1 and 2. Now the whole earth had one language and one speech, and it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. So, I don't know about you, but I like pictures, and I would love to see where the Garden of Eden is compared to the Mount Ararat, which is where the ark landed on those mountains. I would love to see that. I didn't even do that. I didn't even find a picture of that, so sorry guys. Maybe I'll get it next week. But I loved this because there's actual, for the people who question things and like facts and all this, there is an awesome website called, you can go, and I'll put all the links below, is www.arkdiscovery.com, and it's awesome. And I got so much information from this site, and it kind of just made it real to me. So, all right, so this is Noah's Ark. This is where it would be, even today, you could actually go see this. And this is where they believe that Noah's Ark actually was. So for people who think, oh, the Bible is just a book of stories to teach us lessons, no, it actually happened. All right, so there's 4 things that I found. There was a whole list of stuff, but some of the stuff I didn't understand, so I didn't really want to bring it up because then I didn't want to explain it. So I just picked 4 of them, but you can go on the website and you can see all of the stuff. So 1, it is in the shape of a boat with a pointed bow and a rounded stern. 2, exactly length as noted in biblical description. 515 feet or 300 Egyptian cubits. So I guess this guy used Egyptian cubits because Egyptian, not Hebrew cubit, would have been known to Moses, who studied in Egypt, then wrote Genesis. Oh, okay, cool. So we, in those other chapters, we're doing Hebrew, but it does make sense because Moses was an Egyptian before he was called by God and saw the burning bush and, the exile. So, okay, so that makes sense. It rests on a mountain in eastern Turkey, matching the biblical account. The ark rested upon the mountains of Ararat, Genesis 8:4. Ararat being the name of the ancient country Urartu, which covered this region. And it contains petrified wood as proven by lab and analysis. And it's cool because this site is super legit. It has even all of the testings and stuff. And all of the testings they've done of the wood, and they found anchors and stuff. I could have gone on and on and on about this, honestly. But definitely go check it out on the website. It's cool. So then I kind of wanted to see where everything is. I want to see. Let's see. Okay, so this is kind of another visual. So there's Mount Ararat up here. Okay. And then where it picks up for the Tower of Babel, it says a plain in the land of Shinar. And so Shinar is right here, right by the water. Okay, so they, in all of those years, it took them to get to the Tower of Babel. So all of those genealogies that we read, which is 10 years or something? They traveled all the way from here, where the ark landed, all the way to there. And then I wanted to see what it looked like today. So I found this. I thought it was so interesting. So I don't know where the Ararat is on this map, but this talks about where Shinar is. And if you can see, there's Shinar, and there's Iraq, which is interesting. Because where the Tower of Babel was, there's all this war going on. It's really interesting. So that's kind of like today. So there's Shinar right here. Boop. So that's where the Tower of Babel would have been. Interesting stuff. All right, so let's read we already read verse 1 through 2. So let's just reread it since we have those pictures. Now the whole earth had one language and one speech, and it came to pass as they journeyed from the east that they found a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. So this is some of the commentary that I found on these two verses. Benson's commentary, this is from Bible Hub, is language is probably the Hebrew. So that's the language that was across the land at this point. They journeyed from the east of Shinar, where Noah had settled when he left the ark. They were therefore now traveling westward. So, all right, thanks, Benson. And then the second commentary is Jamison Fawcett Brown commentary, and this is what he had to say. The whole earth was one language. The descendants of Noah, united by the strong bond of common language, had not separated, and notwithstanding the divine command to replenish the earth, were unwilling to separate. So that's interesting because, obviously 9:1 says, Genesis 9:1, so God blessed Noah and his sons and said to them, be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth. Not just a little section. Don't just stay here in the mountains or whatever. You need to fill the entire earth. So obviously that's a pretty big job. So I think that's also why God kind of put his hand in things. And then Ellicott's commentary says, land of Shinar, the whole of Chaldea is a level plain, and the soil immensely rich, as it is an alluvial deposit which still goes on forming at the head of the Persian Gulf. So basically right where it was is right where a river was coming in, so the land was super, super rich and good for crops, and really a good place to build a city. So, okay, let's see where things kind of went a little crazy. Let's read 3 through 4. Then they said to one another, come, let us make bricks and bake them thoroughly. They had bricks for stone, and they had asphalt for mortar. And they said, come, let us build ourselves a city and a tower whose top is in the heavens. Let us make a name for ourselves, lest we be scattered abroad over the face of the whole earth. So it's like, okay, so yeah, I know the Lord commanded us to multiply over the whole earth, but let's make a big, huge tower so that we can all stay together and not scatter. Okay, so definitely going back to their sinful natures. All right, so let's go ahead and go through some of the commentary. So this is from Elcott. Bricks in the East usually are simply dried in the sun, and this produces a sufficiently durable building material. It marks a great progress in the art of civilization that these nomads had learned that clay, when burnt, becomes insoluble, and their buildings with a slime or native pitch for cement would be virtually indestructible. So they knew that obviously if you just laid the bricks out in the sun, they'd make pretty good bricks. But if you actually put them in the fire, they'd even be stronger. So it's interesting because throughout the Bible, it says it would put you through the fire to make you stronger. And so, cool. Pulpit commentary is, bricks were usually sun-dried. These being designed to be more durable were to be calcined through the agency of fire, a proof that the tower builders were acquainted with the art of brickmaking, plain Babylon being void of stones and full of clay. So basically, as I said, that Canaan, or I guess it would be Shimnar or whatever, it was in an area where there wasn't going to be as many rocks. They weren't near like mountains where there'd be like rocks hanging out. It would be mainly like soil that it would be really good for growing things, and so it makes sense that they would make the building materials out of clay that is dried and then also burned in the fire, because they didn't have rocks. They couldn't build it on rocks. So I think most of their dwellings probably were rocks, but at that point they had to kind of make use to what they had. Okay, so Benson's commentary, but two things it seems they aimed at in building. So I like this. One, to make them a name, a great name, out of pride and vain glory, to erect a monument that should remain to all posterity. And two, to prevent their dispersion, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the earth, done in disobedience at the command, Genesis 9:1, replenish the earth, that they might be united in one glorious empire. They resolved to build this city and tower to be the metropolis of their kingdom and the center of their unity. So there's definitely no filling of the earth there. And then Jameson, Fawcett Brown's commentary, to build a city and a town was no crime, but to do this to defeat the counsels of heaven by attempting to prevent immigration was foolish, wicked, and justly offensive to God. Very true. And then Matthew Henry's commentary, nothing but the sanctifying grace of Holy Spirit can remove the sinful lust of the human will and the depravity of the human heart. God's purpose was that mankind should form many nations and people all lands. In contempt of the divine will and against the counsel of Noah, the bulk of mankind united to build a city and a tower to prevent their separating. Idolatry was begun, and Babel became one of its chief seats. So obviously, throughout all of history, and then even today, we have a lot of problems with idolatry, which is to worship things other than the Lord. And then Matthew Poole's commentary, they take no care for God's name and the defense and propagation of the true religion as a duty bound them, but merely out of pride and vain glory labor to erect an everlasting monument of their wit and wealth and magnificent to all posterity. So, interesting. All right, and we'll go on with verse 5. But the Lord came down to see the city and the tower of which the sons of men had built. That's crazy. So it's again, the Lord is, at this point, it would seem like he kind of has removed his presence from the earth because of the flood. And then it's almost like his presence comes down and is like, okay, I got to take control over this, So Elcott's commentary on this verse is, for Jehovah is described as a mighty king who, hearing in his upper and heavenly dwelling of man's ambitious purpose, determines to go and inspect the work in person, that having seen, he may deal with the offenders justly. He views, therefore, the city and the tower, for the city was as important a portion of their purpose as the tower, or even more so. The tower, which no doubt was to be the citadel and protection of the city, was for the later's sake to give the people a sense of strength and security, instead of finding it in the Lord. At present, it is one people, and there is one lip to all of them, and that is what they begin to do. Already there are thoughts among them of universal empire, and if thus the spreading of mankind be hindered, and its division into numerous nations, each contributing its share to the progress and welfare of the world, be stopped, man will remain a poor, debased creature, and will fail utterly in accomplishing the purpose for which he was placed upon the earth. So I like that, because it seems like the Lord does the Tower of Babel and like annihilates everything, but it's to help us, because we would just be in one place and we wouldn't be able to be prosperous. There's probably some kind of, oil or something in another place, and they have to find that. A different kind of food in this place, and they have to find it. So there you go. And then Matthew Pohl's commentary is, not by local descent, for he is everywhere. Oh, when it says he comes down, this is in regards to that. Not by local descent, for he is everywhere, but by the manifestation of his presence and the effects of his power in that place. To see the city and the tower, i.e. to know the truth of the fact, thereby setting a pattern for judges to examine causes before they pass sentence. I like that. That kind of brings like a relatively, it relates to how judges have to have that evidence, and they need to see with their own eyes before they make a judgment. Otherwise, God saw this in heaven, but in these expressions he condescends to the capacity of men, the children of men, so-called emphatically. So it's interesting. So if we read the verse again, it says, but the Lord came down to see the city and the tower which the sons of men. Now, as we read before Noah, he would distinguish sons of God as in like the chosen people. So Noah's family would have been like the sons of God and their descendants. But right here it says the sons of men. So this is where he goes into more detail about that. For distinction of them from the sons of God, or the race of Shem, who were not guilty of the sin, and therefore did not partake in the curse, the confusion of their language, but retained their ancient tongue incorrupted for a good while. Interesting. Okay, so what he's trying to say is Shem, which is where we know Hebrews and the Jewish people are all going to be coming from, right? They are still speaking the language, which is what we assumed Adam would be speaking, and then all of Noah. So that's, obviously this is an assumption. We don't know for a fact, but that's really interesting because they got to keep their language. So it makes sense that maybe they weren't a part of that Tower of Babel. So they were kept safe and they could communicate with each other, and they weren't spread out and just kind of annihilated throughout the whole world. They were still kept, and that's why they're still in that area today. And I'll go through kind of like a colored map of kind of like where they're at today. So I think that's so cool. And definitely like a deeper version of the story. And then Gill's commentary is, which the children of men builded or were building, for they had not finished their building, at least not the city, as appears from Genesis 11:8. These were either the whole body of the people under the general appellation of the children of men, or else a part of them, distinguished by this character from the sons of God, who were truly religious, by which it seems that Noah, Shem, Arphaxad, Salah, and others were not concerned in this affair, who thought they might come with the rest into Shinar, yet when they understood their design, refused to join with them in it. So, as they saw them building this tower to God, they obviously knew that their protection, because obviously Shem was on the ark and knew of the power of the protection and the covenant of the Lord, that there was no need to build this huge city, and maybe they had discernment from the Lord of say, yeah, stay away from that. So I guess Gill has a similar commentary to that verse. Okay, so I'm going to read verse 6 through 9. And the Lord said, indeed the people are one, and they all have one language, and this is what they began to do. Now nothing that they propose to do will be withheld from them. Come, let us, as in not just God, it says us, so that could mean angels. It could also mean, probably the angel hosts and the Trinity, possibly. Come, let us go down and there confuse their language, and they may not understand one another's speech. So the Lord scattered them abroad from there over the face of all the earth, and ceased building the city. Therefore its name is called Babel, because there the Lord confused the language of all the earth, and from there the Lord scattered them abroad over the face of all the earth. So it's interesting because he calls them to, increase and multiply and fill the earth. People are stubborn. They don't do what the Lord says, and that's going to be continue through the entire Bible. And so God's like, okay, yeah, well, I'll just help you out with that. That's funny. Okay, so Matthew Henry's commentary is, God has wise and holy ends in allowing the enemies of his glory to carry on their wicked projects a great way and to prosper long. Observe the wisdom and mercy of God and the methods taken for defeating this undertaking. And the mercy of God is not making the penalty equally to the offense, for he deals not with us according to our sins. The wisdom of God in fixing upon a sure way to stop these proceedings. If they could not understand one another, they could not help one another. This would take them off from their building. God has various means and effectual ones to baffle and defeat the projects of proud men that set themselves against him, and particularly he divides them among themselves. Which is true today, too. Question on this part. So it says, whenever I was a kid, I always thought, everyone had a different language, and, it was chaos. But I would hope that there'd be more than one with each of these languages, or reproducing would be very difficult. I mean, could you imagine the amount of sign language, and, hey, you're gorgeous, and I like you, let me give you a hug, and if they didn't know how to, speak each other's language. So I would assume, these details are in the Bible, but I would assume that there's multiple people that have the same language, and then they form tribes, and then they dispersed. But it's interesting. And then I wonder how people of the same language found each other to disperse across the world. So I don't know. That would be craziness. Could you imagine everyone's just building this huge building that everyone's working together, and then it's just all these different languages just happening. It's just people my son has this Jesus Storybook Bible, and so it has the Bible, but it has it in a version that kids would understand, and it's just so funny the way that they relate it to kids. They're your feet are smelly and your hair looks funny or something, or you smell like horse manure or something like that, and that's what they're understanding, because that's how it would make sense for it to be in chaos. But this is just absolutely no understanding whatsoever of all these people building this. That would be chaos. That would be chaos. I'm sure there'd probably be people getting hurt too, I would assume, especially if there were ladders and stuff and people holding and leading something, or oh man, it'd be crazy. And then one thing I want to bring too is as we're learning other countries' languages, so today, now fast forward to today, are we following the Lord? So as we know, English is spoken in so many different countries. Is this because we are close to the Lord returning? Because he calls us to be dispersed, and now it almost seems like there's kind of this unity happening, and we're trying to all have the same money system and all that stuff. Is that steps that the Lord is coming back? I don't know. Okay, and then let me just go over a few of these other pictures that I found. We're almost done. So this is, I like this picture. Can't remember where this came from. Pretty sure this came from the Paul from the beginning. The Foundations for Freedom.net from Paul Bucknell. I'm pretty sure this is where it came from. I can check just to make sure. But basically, it kind of goes into it breaks down. Oh man, it's so blurry. Okay, so Japheth had 7 sons. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So Gomer, Magog, Madai, Javan, Tubal, Meshech, and Tyrus. And so Gomer, and I don't know how they figured this out, and maybe this is later in and we just don't know, or if people just really dug deep into history. But Gomer kind of overtook the lands that we know of: France, Spain, Germany, and Wales. So this is Japheth, okay? Magog is in Romania and Ukraine. Madai is Madras in Iran. Havan is Greek. Tubal is Georgia. Looks like Georgia, but that wouldn't be right. Anyways, Meshech is Moscow, and Tyrus is Macedonia, and it looks like Yogurt Man, but that is not the right way. I don't know. It's like a Y country. Sorry, look at how blurry it is. It's like so blurry. And then Ham had 4 sons. And then as we know, these are the ones that are like kind of the cursed ones. And are always like, they were like, even in the Bible said that they're going to be servants. Had 4 sons, and so they represent, okay, so the Japheth represents Europe and Asia, and then Ham represents the 4 sons, which are Southwest Asia, Canaan, and Africa. So he had the 4 sons: Cush, which is Ethiopia, Mizraim, Egypt, Put, Libya, Canaan, Palestine, oh man, Amorites, Jubilites, and Hittites. So there you go. And then the third one right here is Shem, and they have 5 sons, and that's the Middle East and the Shemites, and that's Elan is Iran, Ashur is Assyria, Arpachshad is Eber, Hebrew, Arahim, and I don't think it's Pakistan. Maybe it's Pakistan. It's just so blurry. And then Lud is Lydia, and Aram is Syria. So I think that's interesting. It's pretty cool to kind of break it down like that into our countries. And then this is the last picture I have, which is where the descendants of Japheth, Ham, and Shem would settle. So as you can see, Japheth is the Europe and Asia. So you see the blue. Okay, these are the Gentiles, and they're also in the United States. It's kind of like scattered because we're like a melting pot. And then Ham is red. You can see Ham is very, very all over the place. All of that. Africa. South Asia, South America. Okay, and then Shem, which is where we assume is like Israel and chosen people. They're brown, they're a much smaller region, but they're all, as you can see, the Holy Land here. On the yellow is Israel. Okay, so that's pretty cool, pretty cool. I'm a visual learner, so that was like really interesting to me. Okay, and then I'm going to read the rest of it, which kind of goes into more detail of Shem, because from Shem, which is Jewish people, that is where Abraham comes from. So they kind of go into a little bit more detail. They add ages and stuff like that. So I'm going to read verse 10 through 32. This is a genealogy of Shem. Shem was 100 years old and begot Arphaxad 2 years after the flood. After he begot Arphaxad, Shem lived 500 years and begot sons and daughters. So just like it was in Genesis, is it 5? They just name a few, and then they say they also had other sons and daughters, but I guess we're just going to focus on these few. All right, Moses. I guess there's a lot of names to remember. Salah lived 30 years and begot Eber. After he begot Eber, Salah lived 403 years and begot sons and daughters. Eber lived 34 years and begot Peleg. After he begot Peleg, Eber lived 430 years and begot sons and daughters. All right. Peleg lived 30 years and begot Ru. And after he begot Ru, Peleg lived 209 years and begot sons and daughters. Ru lived 32 years and begot Serug. After he begot Serug, Ru lived 207 years and begot sons and daughters. Serug lived 30 years and begot Nahor. After he begot Nahor, Serug lived 200 years and begot sons and daughters. Nahor lived 29 years and begot Terah. Ooh, that's kind of young. Wow. 29 years. Usually they're like 100. Interesting. After he begot Terah, Nahor lived 119 years and begot sons and daughters. Now Terah lived 70 years and begot Abram, which we know is going to be Abraham, but it's Abram, Nahor, and Haran. So there you go, Terah. Boom, that's where we understand. This is the genealogy of Terah. Terah begot Abram, Nahor, and Haran. Haran begot Lot, which we know Abraham and Lot. And Haran died before his father Terah in his native land in Ur of the Chaldeans. Then Abram and Nahor took wives. The name of Abram's wife was Sarai, and the name of Nahor's wife was Milcah, and the daughter of Haran, the father of Milcah, and the father of Iscah. But Sarai was barren; she had no child. And Terah took his son Abram and his grandson Lot, the son of Haran, and his daughter-in-law Sarai, his son Abram's wife, and they went out with them from Ur of the Chaldeans and go to the land of Canaan. And they came to Haran and dwelt there. So the days of Terah were 205 years, and Terah died in Haran. So there you go. That's where we we get straight into Abraham. That's the next part, is we get to learn about Abram. I always have to forget it's Abram first before the Lord calls him Abraham. Anyways, thank you guys so much for listening, and I hope you guys have a wonderful Sabbath and a wonderful weekend. I know that we're going up to the mountains to go play in the snow this weekend, and should be really fun. But anyways, thank you so much, and have a wonderful night. God bless. Bye-bye.